Hi, I'm Mike Bellevue. I'm the black powder editor for Guns of the Old West magazine, and we're starting a three-part series of videos on the guns of 1873. And I know all of you who are real aficionados of Old West firearms probably divide the universe up into two time periods, before 1873 and after 1873. Because without a doubt, 1873 was the seminal year in U.S. firearms design. The three greatest firearms of the Old West all hit the market in 1873. And they were, of course, the Colt single-action Army revolver, the Winchester Model 1873 and 4440, and the trapdoor Springfield in the then new cartridge of 4570. And they really did change the game. They changed the whole landscape of firearms in America. So this is the first part of the series, and we're going to start off by taking a look at the Colt single-action Army revolver of 1873. This is Colt's single-action Army revolver. It is probably the best-known firearm in the world, thanks to Hollywood movies, if nothing else. And it truly is one of the finest firearms ever made. Now, there are a lot of copies of this out there. In fact, when they're made by Uberti or by Pieta, we typically call those reproductions Colt clones. But this is a genuine article. This is made in Colt's custom shop, and it's my second Colt. Back when I was in college in 1973, I fell in love with a beautiful used Colt single-action Army revolver with pearl grips, and I just had to have it. But it cost $200, and that was going to put a heck of a dent in my budget for books and beer as a college student. I never did get it. I ended up buying a Haas Western Marshall as my single-action revolver, and somebody else got that Colt. But at the time, I said to myself, you know, you can't afford the best of everything. I'll probably never have a Rolls-Royce car. There are a lot of things that are out of reach. But someday, I'm going to have a real Rolex, and I'm going to have a genuine Colt. And the Rolex was easy. I managed to put that together about a year after getting out of college. But the Colt, for some reason, eluded me until just a couple of years ago. So I went over 30 years before I got my first Colt, which was a nice used second generation Colt. And now I've got my second one because I really wanted one with the black powder frame. You can see there's no cross bolt. It's the cylinder is held in by this screw, and it's got this beautiful bullseye ejection rod. It's just a great gun, and it's chambered in 45 Colt, which is absolutely an iconic cartridge. And this is one of the great guns of 1873. You can see 45 Colt, breakthrough cartridge, Colt single-action Army, a breakthrough revolver. And the way we load them is we drop one in, leave one empty, skip one, and now we're going to load four. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. Now, when I cock this hammer, you're going to be able to see daylight right there. I am going to be dropping the hammer on an empty chamber, and this gun is perfectly safe now. We can carry it around and go shoot it. Before we shoot the Colt single action, let's take a look at a few of its features. This is a new gun from the custom shop, and even though it looks like a first generation Colt because it has a black powder frame, it is not. It is a current production gun, and it has some significant differences from the first generation Colts. The most obvious difference is the firing pin. Now, I don't have a first generation Colt single action handy to show you, but I can show you the firing pin on an 1878 Colt, which was their big bore double action, and it has a cone-shaped firing pin, as you can see here, which is the same type of firing pin that the early first generation single actions had. And as you can see, this current Colt has the high pressure firing pin that was developed in the 20th century for smokeless powder. It has some other differences as well. It has second generation type sights, which are much easier to see than the first generation ones that we would have found on an original Colt. So it's got some differences, but cosmetically it looks very much like a first generation Colt, and that's what I was going for. One of the key features of the black powder frame is that the base pin is held in position by a small set screw instead of the cross bolt that you see on later guns. And it's kind of interesting that Colt didn't put a cross bolt on the single action Army until 1896. And the reason that's interesting is because they were using cross bolts on their pistols as early as 1877. The 1877 double action and the 1878 double action both have cross bolts holding the base pins in, but they continued with the screw until 1896 on the single action Army. Well, this is the second generation Colt, as you know, and we've already explained how it has this cross pin right here to hold the cylinder pin in place, while the first generation Colt has a screw in here. So if you don't know how to disassemble this to get the cylinder out, it's really a pretty simple procedure. You put the hammer on half cock, and you can either open the cylinder gate now or open it later. I'll do it later because I'll be flipping this around. Then you depress this cross pin, and that takes the tension off of the cylinder pin, and you can pull it out. Now, you can do that by hand, and most people do, but I am here to recommend that you pick up this little tool from Brownells, and it's called a base pin removal tool, and it has one side for Ruger and another side for Colt. And it's a little bit pricey. You can get tools that only have the one side. So if you only have a Colt type gun, you know, a clone or a Colt, or if you only have a Ruger, you can get a one-sided tool. It's a good bit cheaper. They cost, I think, around $40, which I know seems probably pretty extravagant. But if you've ever had to take a pair of vice grips to a base pin to get it out, you will wish that you had one of these things. They're absolutely worth having. And if you've got a real Colt with as much money as they cost, you're foolish not to spend the $40 to do this, particularly if you're a black powder shooter, because the fouling really can build up on there. So here's the way we do it. Flip her over, take your thumb, put that pin in, put the base pin puller right here, and slide. And it's done. Base pin's out. And once the base pin's out, the cylinder just comes right out. Now, on first generation Colts, or on the current black powder frame Colts, the procedure is a little bit different because obviously there is no cross pin. What there is instead is a small screw. And try to get the light on it so you can see it right there. Right? And what we've got to do is remove that screw first. So the procedure, once again, is very much the same. I'm going to put the pistol on half cock. I'm going to get an appropriate size screwdriver, and just like that little tool I showed you, the other valuable thing to do is to get a set of screwdrivers. So I'm going to remove that screw, and you should always use screwdrivers that are properly fitting to your gun. And in fact, while we're talking about it, I'll just show you. This is my screwdriver set. It's also from Brownells, and it has every gun bit for gunsmith screwdrivers that they make. And that way I don't go marring up the screws on a valuable gun. Now once that screw is out, we'll just put that aside. The procedure is the same. All right, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to take my base pin puller, pop it in, base pin's out. There we go. Half cock, open the gate, and the cylinder is out. Now you can clean it and do whatever you need to do. Now the final first generation touch on the black powder framed Colt is the ejector rod button. As you can see, it's what's known as the Bullseye Button, which means it's circular and has that hole in the center, as opposed to the crescent button that you can see to the right on the second generation Colt. Now, Colt actually only used the Bullseye button for about 9 years. They didn't even use it through most of the first generation of Colt, so it really is the mark of an early Colt. And a lot of people don't like them. They think they snag up on your holsters and that sort of thing. I actually install them on most of my long barrel clones. I think they look better and they're easier to use. They give you much more positive finger control when you're ejecting. So I absolutely wanted to have one installed on my new Colt. What's the point in having a black powder frame Colt if you're not going to shoot it with black powder? Yeah, I like Smith & Wessons, I like Merwin Hulberts, I like Remingtons, I like them all. But if I could only have had one pistol in 1880, this one would be it. Keep checking back for the rest of the series of the Guns of 1873.